Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. Joining me this week goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's here in the fight capital of the world. Danny Segura out in Miami, 305 in the house. Matt Wells is back, repping the Big D, Dallas, Texas, and of course, Cold Coffee. He's on the ones and twos, and we're going to get right to it. All right, it's fight week, and Saturday marks the return of Jon Bones Jones, one of the greatest ever to compete in MMA. Jones and Ciryl Gane will compete for the UFC's vacant heavyweight title in the main event at UFC 285. Goes and I will be hosting a watch-along. More about that in a sec. Aside from this official title being given out on Saturday, there's an unofficial title that's kind of at stake here. GOAT status, greatest of all time. So tell me, panel, where do you stand on this subject? Matt, it's great to have you back, like I said, so you're going to kick things off for us.
Absolutely. Glad to be back as always. But yes, to answer the question, I think Jon Jones is the GOAT currently. I mean, we're talking about just in-cage action here, not talking about all the other stuff that goes on in his life outside of it. But inside the cage, I mean, for me, he's the greatest that we've seen. The guy has just absolutely dominated pretty much everybody he's fought outside of the last, 2 or 3 fights, which have been closer, and those, deserve the appropriate criticism. But if you look back at that run that he had to the title initially, I mean, just go look at the resume. Go look at the names. Ryan Bader, Shogun, Rampage, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor, Chael Sonnen, and one of the greatest fights of all time with Gus. The guy has been through the grinder of opponents, and he just goes in and shows out. He's one of those guys that, said, hey, I'm going to try to beat you where you're best at, not necessarily do what he's best at all the time and still go out there and excel. So he's one of the GOATs, man. I mean, if he's not the GOAT in your book, he should be number 2. He's just an incredible what he can do inside the cage. And now we get to see him go up for heavyweight. We've been waiting for that for so long. We finally get to see it against a very dangerous striker in Ciryl Gane. He's not going in there against like some, run-of-the-mill heavyweight who's going to try to go in there and grapple with you. Cyryl's going to come in, try to take your head off, and he's going to be bouncing in and out, real quick movements. It's going to be a real unique matchup here when they get in there and mix it up, and I'm so intrigued. Like, I can't wait to see this one play out, man.
Yeah, what's funny, Matt, is with Jon Jones, we always thought, what would he look like at heavyweight? Well, hopefully, he kind of looks like Ciryl Gane. I mean, he's got a hell of a test in front of him. I kind of agree with the way you put it. If he's not number 1 now, he better be number 2 coming out of this weekend. But we all have different criteria. My man Danny Segura is next.
Yep, I got him at number 2. So in number 1 for me is GSP. Why? Because he's got a second title, something that Jones does not. Now, Jones obviously had an amazing run. GSP has 2 losses, but he did avenge them, but he does have 2 losses. So I get the whole dilemma. I get why some people have Jones as number 1, but for me, numero uno is GSP. But as I said, the thing that I've held the thing that I've held GSP for number 1 is that second title. Well, that can change on Saturday night. If Jon Jones wins, then all of a sudden I don't have much of an argument to say that GSP is number 1, and I will have to reassess. Obviously, a lot of it is going to depend on how he wins, how he looks, also how Ciryl Gane looks as well. He could go in there injured and fight terribly. You never know. And I do think that the win that Georges St-Pierre had, he beat a champion who already had 8 title defense. Ciryl Gane, in this case, this is for the vacant title. So again, a lot of factors. I think I will have to see exactly what happens, how it all unfolds, how it all feels, then reassess. That's obviously keeping in mind if Jon Jones wins. But for me right now is GSP. But I do got to admit and recognize that could change on Saturday night depending on how things shake out. Undoubtedly, Jon Jones has had a stellar career, a historic career. He's a historic talent and could very well become the GOAT on Saturday.
Yeah, Graham Stewart in our chat agrees with Matt Wells. He says he's the current GOAT right now. I'm kind of with Danny. I'm with GSP, but I recognize that Saturday that could all change. So we got a best of 5 going on here, Goes. You're the tiebreaker. It's like the NBA first round here.
Yeah, man. I mean, right now, currently, I have GSP in that spot, but I think a win for Jon Jones here pretty much seals that deal. It's 2 belts and 2 divisions, and that is kind of what has kind of kept them apart for me. Remember, what GSP did was pretty tremendous because it wasn't your normal 10-pound jump, right? He went from 170 to 185. Jon Jones is kind of trumping that. He's going even further, right? He's fighting big old heavyweights. That's something that you have to respect. And for the longest time, all of Jon Jones' work was at 205. So it was just kind of like you're the GOAT at light heavyweight and you're working on everything else. GSP to me has always had that little edge on him. But if he does this, there's not going to be much to really debate here, guys. If you look at it, you look at GSP's got 2 losses. Yes, he came back and he was able to avenge those. But what do you compare that to? Jon Jones just having some close calls? I mean, he still got the W at the end of the day, and that's all that matters. That's what we're looking at, right? So one thing I do want to remind the public is even if Jon Jones comes out, wins, let's say we make him the GOAT, you have to hold on to that status, right? Because if Jon Jones turns around and loses a couple, well, now that debate, we start over again, right? Now you have 2 losses, kind of like GSP, even if it's 1 loss. I mean, this is something that constantly gets debated. But I think a win here for Jon Jones takes that spot from GSP. But currently I have GSP.
All right, fair enough. You guys smashed it. So since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to throw one more at you guys here. What if Jones moves up and kind of has a little bit of that Jones feel to how he looked against OSP? Can he get away with that and beat Ciryl Gane? No disrespect to OSP. I'd hate to pile on the guy because he just took an L, but Ciryl Gane is a proper heavyweight. Matt, back to you.
Yeah, I think so, because it's that matchup. Like I kind of said, like these are 2 strikers. Like if it was like a Curtis Blades or somebody who they're like really grinded on him and tried to get him to the mat, we're not going to see that in this one. This is going to be 2 guys trying to take each other's heads off with striking. Like, is Jon's chin going to hold up when Ciryl touches him? Like, that's the biggest question for me. Like, how is he going to react to that power of getting touched by like a true heavyweight who is a pinpoint accurate striker? Like, these are all questions I can't wait to see get answered, man.
Yeah, and off a 3-year layoff.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
Danny, what do you think, man? Like, you remember the OSP fight? We all said, I don't know about that. Even DC was making faces from cage side.
Yeah, and I don't know if he'll be making faces again, since he's going to be sitting there commentating on the fight. But
Twice,
yeah, we'll see how this all looks, right? This is what makes this fight so intriguing and so interesting, right? The fact that Jon Jones is moving up to heavyweight, and there's so many questions around it. One, how is he going to look with the extra weight? How is he going to look with that style of fight that Ciryl Gane brings? Also, the long layoff, 3 years, that's a long time. Plus, he was already kind of looking a little bit questionable, a little bit human in his last performances. A lot of those were close calls. A lot of people thought he lost those, especially the Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes one. So yeah, this fight is highly intriguing, and that's why I say when we were talking about the GOAT argument, it's not a math equation. It's not okay, he won, boom, you can insert that in there, he becomes the GOAT. We got to see how he wins, how he looks, how his opponent looked, because if Ciryl Gane goes out there and has a terrible performance, Jon Jones barely squeaks out a win like he has in his previous performances, bro, GSP finished and choked out Michael Bisping. Like, again, I think the equation math-wise would be kind of tied up, but not all wins are created equal. So again, a lot of factors going into this. We'll have to see how he looks, but it's more than just winning. He's got to look impressive doing it, and I think if he does that, it'll put him over, and he'll become the GOAT, at least in my eyes.
All right, goes. Let me reward this the chat. I'm going to give you a different one. Joey from the chat room says, "Do you guys think Ciryl Gane was being honest when he says that he only trains when he's booked to a fight?" I throw it to you because you've been a part of some of these interviews that we've had with Gane and Team Gane.
Yeah, and I think he is honest in saying that. But his coach came out and kind of clarified that. He said that was sort of the past. That's how he handled things. And now things are a little different. He's taking it a little bit more serious. But, I think they like to throw things out there to kind of get in Jon Jones's head. Jon Jones, at the end of the day, he handles business in the cage. But you could tell that there are some things that you can say that can sometimes resonate inside of his head by the way he acts in and outside of the cage. And I think that's going to be another factor in this fight, guys. Like, he's got extreme pressure coming off a 3-year layoff, right? All this GOAT status talk. One thing that Ciryl Gane has shown before in the past is he can win a boring fight. He doesn't care if the fans are booing. He'll go out there and he'll do his thing. I don't know how Jon Jones will react to that. I think he starts hearing some boos, I think he's going to come out there and maybe be a little too aggressive and fall into Cyryl's hands. So another factor to just kind of look out for in that fight.
Matthew Franco in the chat says he trains every day. He's not buying it. JD Reality YT says, is Ciryl as big of a threat to Jon as the media is making it seem to be? He actually thinks Jones takes him down easily. TKO within 3 rounds. Oof. I think it'll.
It's a bold
That is
prediction right there.
bold.
It's possible though. It is possible. One other wrinkle to this whole thing, I do think it's actually kind of interesting how we look back at Jon's earlier career. He said he didn't train for Gus. He said he didn't train for DC, or he was out partying before DC. And now you got your first heavyweight competitor saying he hadn't been training. Like, whether that's true or not, it's just kind of a fun little wrinkle.
The laziest, most talented fighters on the roster.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, a lot will be cleared up on Saturday, and Goz and I will be hosting a watch along here on MMA Junkie. So 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Join us for 4 prelims and 5 fights on the pay-per-view. The staff is all on deck. They're smashing it. Our coverage will be top-notch. You got to keep it locked on MMA Junkie. And we're going to move on to the next topic. Yesterday, Tommy Fury defeated Jake Paul via split decision, hanging that first L on Paul's boxing resume. What was your reaction to the fight? Did you agree with the decision? Danny, you scored the fight for MMA Junkie, so we come to you first.
I'm still recovering from all the hits that I took on Twitter because I scored it for Jake Paul, 76-75. Now, keep in mind that I'm also doing the play-by-play for MMA Junkie, which requires me to type at a very high speed, looking at one screen and switching to the other to keep up with the fight. Also, boxing is a little bit harder to score than MMA, just because in MMA, I think it's a little bit more clear on who's winning. And also, it's much shorter rounds, 3 minutes. So instead of 5. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. I haven't rewatched the fight, just looking at it without having to do another task. So I do leave a little room for some inaccuracy, I may say. But I don't know. Looking at it, I thought it was pretty competitive. A lot of people were saying online that it was a wash. I don't think so. I thought Jake Paul held his own. He connected several times that, quite hard on Tommy Fury and vice versa. And heck, Jake Paul was the only one that got a knockdown from the fight, which was obviously in the last round, and that gave him a 10-8. So I don't mind that Tommy Fury won. Again, it was a very close fight. I think it could have gone either way. I'm not going to sit here and be like, Jake Paul was robbed. No. I do want to go back and rewatch the fight, and maybe I'll have a different scoring. I'm not sure. But it was a close fight, man. It was a close competitive fight. You can tell that, as much as these two guys denied it and saying they were going to destroy one another and the other was, trash and sucked, they were pretty much the same level or close to. I mean, they're not great fighters, but they're not trash either. They're somewhere in the middle. But they've definitely put in the work, and they're certainly dedicated fighters. So, yeah, I mean, what else can I say about that? First loss of Jake Paul. Who knew that it would come against the boxer, right? Who knew that we needed a boxer to defeat Jake Paul? So, yeah.
That's a good point. All right. How about you, Goz? Reaction, score?
Yeah, I thought Tommy Fury won the fight. You really have to look at this fight a little differently. If you're a hardcore boxing fan, like, this isn't going to be high-level boxing, okay? It's going to be pretty sloppy. And you're going to see a lot of flash because these are younger fighters that are still getting their feet wet. They're going to throw bombs that initially, when you look at them, you think they land, but they probably didn't really. And that I think that was a little bit of Jake Paul's downfall in this fight. Was he was just trying to connect with that big over the top hand, and it didn't always go his way, right? And I think Tommy Fury, little by little, chipped away at that. You got to give that kid his props, man. That is a very high level pressure situation that Tommy Fury survived. Even with the scorecards being red and knowing it's a split decision, like, I thought his goose was cooked, to be honest, the way things just kind of go Jake Paul's way. But I thought the proper guy won, and we have to see what's next for Jake Paul. That we can go in so many different directions for this guy, but I think he still has juice left.
All right. And much like the fight, we have one judge on one side, one judge on the other side. So if this is going to be a split decision here on this panel as well, how did you have it, Matt? What was your reaction to the fight?
My final score was 75-74 in favor of Fury.
Okay.
And the score looks closer, I mean, than I actually felt. Like I thought Fury clearly won the fight, but scoring the rounds as they were with the point deductions, the ridiculous point deductions from the referee there, those just didn't make any sense whatsoever. Because you have to consider, like Ghost said, these are not the highest levels of boxers. There's going to be a lot of sloppiness that goes on in the clinch and things like that. So why are you deducting points for that? Like it wasn't anything egregious or anything like that. It seemed like the ref was really annoyed to be, involved in such a mediocre level boxing contest. Like that's the vibe I got from him as this fight unfolded. But I thought Tommy did the better boxing throughout, like top and bottom. So I scored 3 rounds for Jake, and one of those rounds he got the point deducted, so it ended up being an even round. The knockdown in the last round it was a nice knockdown, but it wasn't one of those knockdowns where it was like, oh, he hurt Tommy. He caught him at the perfect moment to knock him off balance and send him down. But it still counts as a 10-8. I mean, but if you look at the rest of that round, Tommy still came back strong and put some hands on him. So it was a solid fight for what it was, man. My thing is that this whole event felt like a big event. I mean, obviously, aside from the Saudi, sports washing, all that kind of stuff like that, that's a whole nother topic that we won't get into at this moment. But it felt like, promotion-wise, it felt like it was a high-level boxing match. High-level boxing promotion. The guys conducting themselves as high-level professionals in the boxing realm. It felt like, they were top-notch professionals, presentation-wise. Everything they said in the interviews before and after the fact felt very professional. A+ professionalism, C-level boxing match in between that. But it was fun all in all. I mean, if you honestly sit there and watch that fight and said it was a bad fight or something like that, I don't know what to tell you, because it was a great fight between two guys that were at the exact same level. And that's what you kind of really hope to see. You don't want to see one guy go in there and just dominate another guy. For this kind of level of competition, it was perfect for what it was, in my opinion. These guys are evenly matched, and that's fine. They don't have to be guys to go out there and say, hey, you're ready to go fight Canelo now. Like, no, we're not having remotely the same conversations, if you believe that.
Sounds like some good reported paydays too, so can't hate on that.
Prize fighting.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this, guys. Shane Carey in the chat says, journeyman level scrappers. Is that fair? I mean, we had a 6-0 versus an 8-0. I think a journeyman's more defined by towards the end, what did you do, not what you were about to do. And does it matter? Because again, I think we can all agree it was pretty entertaining. And even if you go to Twitter Reacts or anything like that, everybody was kind of giving them a round of applause. Let's go back to you, Danny. What do you think?
Well, journeymen, they're not, because journeymen are usually like fighters that are, fillers for a lot of cards that are names that you kind of recognize, but they're not necessarily huge. And they also help build other people. Like these guys were the main event. These guys were easily the biggest fight of the weekend, not being the best fighters of the weekend. So they're not journeymen. I don't think that category is suited for them. However, I would agree that it's not world-class boxing, actually quite far from it. As Matt said, the production, the treatment, everything that surrounded the making of this fight, it was A+. It was just as you would see in a regular boxing title fight. But the actual level of boxing, it was about C. Again, these guys are not trash. I mean, 80-90% of people go in the ring with either Tommy Fury or Jake Paul, and they're going to get knocked out or they're going to get their ass kicked. These guys know how to box. They train hard. They're in shape. But are they Canelo? Are they already like some world-class elite? No. So again, respect to them, but sort of like, it's like they're doing the damn thing, but they're not the best fighters out there. So I would disagree with that comment, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I was kind of having a little bit deja vu where this all started, because it really started with Ben Askren, right? Because prior to that, he was fighting like a YouTuber and an NBA guy. And I remember that whole thing with Triller. It was, what's this comedian's name? Pete Davidson. Doing like the whole thing, and now we got like Sean Porter, and it's a much more professional broadcast, and it's just like, man, we've come really far, right? Like,
yes.
Didn't they
it's
actually
just
have
pretty
slap
crazy,
fights
this
in between one of
whole
those
evolution.
What's that, Matt?
Didn't they actually have like a slap fight in between one of those?
They had a
fights?
slap fight. They had Ric Flair wooing from the limo to the concourse.
Oscar De La Hoya and others were feeling it. We're pretty lit.
It was like a 5-man booth or something like that, 6-man booth. And during COVID. Oh my God. I can't believe you reminded me of that disaster. But yeah, they sure have come a long way. Goes, it looked like a proper prize fight. Were you not entertained?
I was entertained, and that's the name of the game. That's what they sold us
Mhm.
on. They did exactly what they told us they were going to do. They took it serious. Now, when they got in there, was it the high level of boxing that we're used to seeing? No, especially when you hear some of the names that are commentating, the announcers. Yeah, what you saw in the ring is not what we're used to. But if you look at anybody else with those types of records, that's kind of what they're going to look like, right? I give them a little bit of respect in the sense that they didn't lie to us. They came in prepared. That's the one thing about Jake Paul. Like whatever he does, you can tell he didn't take it lightly. You know, he trains, he tries to get better. I have to give him his respect for that, and I have to give Tommy Fury his respect too. I think the only confusion that comes up from time to time is the stance that Jake Paul takes. Do you want to be a pro boxer? Do you want people to look at you as a pro boxer, or do you want to be more on that entertainment side? If you want people to look at you as a pro boxer, then yeah, you're probably going to get some criticism here and there because you need more tools, right, than just that big overhand right. If you just want to be the entertainment guy, then yeah, you're doing exactly what everybody wants.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Matt, before I get your final take, I got to throw it out there as well. We're all wondering, this was supposed to be maybe us talking about Jake versus Nate, early lean, the summer of 2023. What are you thinking? We haven't brought that name up again because these guys probably have a rematch in they probably had a rematch clause, so they probably have a rematch in their future. And then Nate's barking at Logan, and Logan has boxed before, so maybe that's a whole other story. But where does all this fit in? What do you think? What do you guys think Nate's thinking? Like, did the paydays maybe drop a little bit? The buzz around a future fight drop a little bit? What do you think, Matt?
I don't think they necessarily dropped a little bit. I do think it was interesting that Nate went at Logan. I mean, that's a whole nother wrinkle that we weren't, I guess, necessarily anticipating, right? But I don't think that's a fight that's going to come to fruition, especially with Logan doing his WWE thing now and actually being amazing at that. Legit amazing. If you guys are, watch pro wrestling, go check out Logan. Like, he's actually really, really good at that. But I think it's one of those things where, Jake could lose 2 or 3 fights and it still be a thing that people are going to tune in to watch, considering the opponent. Like, if it ends up being Nate, cool. Like, you're tuning in because they're going to talk a lot of crap to each other. It's an entertainment thing for sure. Nate's going to bring the UFC audience. Jake's going to bring his YouTube social media audience. Like, people are still going to watch. At the end of the day, I don't think it was ever a thing of like the undefeated boxer Jake Paul. Like, sure, like that was an element of it, but I don't think everything goes away. Like if he was like a traditional real pro boxer, where it's like, oh, you lose like a lot of your momentum if you lose a fight. And, if you're trying to be a legit career boxer, that's not what Jake Paul is. He's doing this. It's an entertainment thing. And, it's all the social media, all the followers, everything. Like, literally, that was the first bullet point on his bio when they put his name on the screen. However many freaking followers it was. Like, that should tell you right there what we're dealing with.
On that. Come on. 21.5 million on Instagram.
There you go.
So this fight can still be made, Danny. Jake and Nate, it'll still have the same pop. And let's not forget, Nate's got a brother named Nick. He's always wanting to throw hands. KSI he's not going away anytime soon. It's like we can have these the mid 80s, the 4 kings, everybody just kind of fighting each other and people tune in.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with Matt Wells. Look, the whole Jake Paul phenomenon, this whole thing is elite celebrity boxing. That's what it is. This is probably the highest level you can get of boxing within celebrity. Like, we're looking at it. And so that's what we're tuning in for. We're tuning in for the celebrity because these guys have big followings and they talk trash and they do, they do duke it out and they do show up and fight, right? So it's not really the whole undefeated thing. Now, the whole undefeated thing, it is a selling point, but I don't think it's gonna be a deal breaker. So they can still make Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, and in fact, they might even be even more compelling now that you kind of see a little bit of the limitations of Jake Paul, and you go, okay, maybe we'll get an opportunity at not having a depressive night, at least for the MMA fans, since Jake Paul's just been beating up on all of our legends. And maybe we have, greater hope than we thought. So I'm still about it. Again, I don't hate these things are not my favorite. I don't hate them either. So yeah, I think it'll still be big. I'm really curious to see if Jake Paul is going to take that immediate rematch. It certainly would be very McGregor-esque if he does, and if he does win, it does kind of like, it doesn't erase the loss, but you can kind of move forward and be like, look, every single boxer that I fought, I've been better and I proved it. I wonder what he does next. Certainly, if you were to take another L, I do think you start going down a different path. So I don't know. The Nate Diaz fight is compelling. I think, F it, do it. Why not?
All right. Goes, how about you, man? Are you still interested in Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz?
I am, because I was never interested in the first place because there was a belt on the line or because of their records or their status. It was a high school fight, man. When you were in fourth period and you heard someone was going to fight, you never said, how many sophomores did that guy drop? Didn't he get dropped by a freshman? Like, you didn't care. You just show up and watch the fight. That's what this fight is. You don't care what the records are. You don't care what's on the line. They're going to talk trash and somebody's going to eat crow. That's why you tune in. If I'm Jake Paul, I don't fight Tommy Fury again, because he didn't lose that fight because he was unconditioned or anything like that. He lost because he wasn't as good of a boxer as Tommy Fury was. If he loses a second fight to him, now that whole angle of being a boxer goes away, and now you're just kind of banished to fighting MMA guys or whoever, or rappers, or who knows, right? But if you take some time and you go and you fight Nate Diaz, that will give you some time to maybe get better at boxing and then revisit trying to be a boxer again. I think that's probably the smarter route, but I'm always in, man. Put Nate Diaz in front of him. I'll watch.
Good stuff, guys. All right. Good possibilities for all these guys. Before we move on to topic number 3, I just want to say I get caught up in hosting the show, and sometimes I say the dumbest shit ever. I want to apologize right now to Mr. Roberto Duran, Mr. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Tommy Hearns for even comparing these wackos to you guys. I apologize. I have no excuse. We move on to topic number 3.
They're not even the 4 Burger Kings, George. I can't believe you did that.
Bellator had a welterweight title unification bout in the main event at Bellator 291. Undisputed champion Yaroslav Amosov defeated interim champion Logan Storley. The Ukrainian takes his record now to 27-0, and he staked his claim for being the number one welterweight in the world. Do you agree with his number 1 status? Goes, you're leading off here.
This is a tricky question because, okay, look, first of all, he had an amazing performance, all right? I was worried about what he went through physically and mentally, coming back and trying to become a fighter again. That is so tough. And Storley's, he's a tough out. He's a very, very tough fighter. So the reason why this question is tricky is because if you were to ask me, is he the best welterweight champion in the world? I would say yes, he is. Is he the best welterweight in the world? That is a little tricky because of what's going on with Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. I think that needs to be resolved. I think if Usman gets that win, we're not really having this discussion very much, right? Then you drop down a little bit. You got your Colby Covingtons, your Bilal Muhammads of the world. What we need is more of a body of work, right, from Amosov. We need to see him do this at a high level over a longer period of time. Now, he has all the tools to keep doing what he's doing. I think he's improving, and I think he's on his way to doing that. It's just a matter of time. Best welterweight champion right now? Yes. Best welterweight? I need more time to figure that one out.
All right. So you're saying he can beat Edwards, but he would have trouble with other welterweights. Got it. I think that's fair. How about you, Matt?
I think he's a fantastic fighter. He's technically sound. He makes fantastic decisions, high fight IQ. He's not always going to go out there and get a finish. Like, that's kind of the thing that I guess some people would kind of look for when you consider the best in the world. Like, are you going out there and finishing guys? He's not necessarily doing that. And I mean, that's fine because he's not a boring fighter. He goes out there and he will box your head off. He will kickbox your head off, if you let him. But he's not going to go in there and rush and, leave himself open for a lot of mistakes, which I think is something that you have to really commend at the end of the day, because being a fighter with high fight IQ and recognize what's going on at all times is super valuable to me. When you consider like the best fighters in the world. That's one of the things that I kind of value about Kamaru Usman. He's very, very good when it comes to fight IQ and making the right decisions. Made one slip up in his last fight, and you see what cost him, right? So he kind of let his foot off the gas and, kind of let Leon, creep back in there. But that's one of those things, man. He's one of the best technical welterweights in the world. And he's definitely in the top 5, top 3, maybe even. But I would think if you start talking about matchups with these guys, with the Leons, with the Kamaros, with the Colby Covingtons even, it comes down to the matchups. Because I think Kamaru would give him a lot of issues when it comes to the wrestling department. I like Goz's point, if you pair him in there against Leon, that'll be more of a kickboxing match. Like, who's going to go in there and play chess better, I think, at the end of the day. But these are high-level, fantastic fighters. He absolutely deserves to be in the discussion with these other guys. Amosov he's among the elite, man. And it just sucks because the way the landscape of MMA is, we're never going to see these matchups against, the UFC guys, unless if he jumps ship or one of them jump ship. We just one of those things that boxing has the luxury of. We get to see the best fight the best if they can come together on the negotiation table. Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, if we ever see that, whoever knows. But it's one of those things, man. He deserves to be in that conversation with these guys for sure.
Yep, I agree. No one's calling him crazy so far. Even Sky V's and El Daddy in the chat says Amosov was simply amazing. I think he looked better than ever against his biggest rival. And Danny, so let's go to you, but let me give a refresher. I know you guys know this, but for the people watching, listening in the chat, the current number 5 on the USA Today Sports MMA Junkie rankings, which takes in all of the different promotions out there. Right now, it's Edwards 1, Usman 2, Covington 3, Muhammad 4, Amosov 5. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I think those numbers are pretty good. I would have Amosov though over Muhammad, to be quite honest. But yeah, Amosov is clearly a top 5 welterweight in the world. You can't look at his performance and say otherwise. Now, is he number 1? He can definitely give a tough fight to Leon Edwards or Kamaru Usman. Certainly could beat him, just as they could beat him as well. And this is the problem with Bellator. And it's not Bellator's fault, but the UFC has such a deep roster of elite fighters that it's hard to say that Kamaru Usman is not. I mean, it'd be silly. It'd be foolish to say that Kamaru Usman is not an elite fighter or Leon Edwards, right? Because they've been fighting high-level competition for so long that at some point it just becomes undeniable. But for Amosov, he doesn't have the same luxury being at Bellator. Yes, you can see the performance, and technique-wise, you see world-class. You see someone that's elite. You see someone that's high level. But then you go look at his resume, and yes, the Logan Storley is a fantastic fighter. That win is nice. Douglas Lima, of course. But then right outside those 2 names, which compile his last 3 fights, then you start getting into the Mark Lemminger, David Rickles, Ed Ruth, Eric Silva. Those are good fighters, but not really elite. So it's are we going to really base off that he's number 1, the very best, just off 3 fights, 2 opponents? I think that's a hard argument to make. So again, is he a top 5? Is he among the very best? Can he give elite fighters, including the champion over at the UFC, a tough fight and maybe even beat him? Yeah, 100%. But if you want to make a claim that he is number 1, you need more than what he's got. And again, a lot of it is not his fault. A lot of it is just the way the industry, is shaped. So again, we can't really fault him or Bellator. That's just the way things are. But I feel a little bit uneasy making that claim that he's number 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think the way we put it, even if the champ were to listen in right here, I think he would probably be good with that, because you have to fight these people to really prove it to us. You can make the claim, we didn't call him crazy, and that's all we can do for now, but we got to see them compete against each other to really, really get the fair assessment. However, I will say, huge weekend for him. This was the week that marked the 1-year anniversary of the unfortunate circumstances of what's happening overseas, the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I know that had to have been a big, big win for him, his country. And that, my friends, is the biggest fight of his life. He's actually partaken and held up arms for his country. So all respect to Yaroslav Amosov. All right, let's go to topic number 4 here. After almost 4 years away from competing, noted UFC strawweight Tatiana Suarez defeated longtime UFC flyweight Montana De La Rosa. Now, this fight did take place at 125 pounds. Suarez won the fight via submission. Though she competed as a flyweight, she wants to return as a strawweight. She mentioned Rose Namajunas as a possible future opponent, the former strawweight champion. However, that former champion has talked about moving up the flyweight. Kind of a mess here, but options. We got ourselves options. What's her best path towards gold? If you were advising Ms. Suarez, how would you advise her? Matt, it's back on you.
It's an interesting position that she's in, because she went out there and fought at flyweight against a very good flyweight Montana De La Rosa, and did what she's best at with pretty much no trouble at all. She is a grappler through and through. She will go in there and put you on your back and dominate you on the ground, and she did that. Tapped her out with a beautiful guillotine choke. And if you would have said like, hey, like flyweight is her home now, perfect, because it looks like that should be your home. I'm not a fan of guys and gals fight or cutting weight whatsoever. So if you can go out there and dominate your competition like you did at 125 without having to cut an extra 10 pounds, why cut the extra 10 pounds? You're just hurting yourself and your body. I don't know if that's a tough cut for her. I haven't asked her that question. If it's not, cool, go back down to strawweight. But my thing is, I think that the path towards flyweight, it's a little bit easier because Valentina's pretty much cleaned out the division, right? She's got a title fight coming up. After that, she can make a case. Hey, I'm here. Let's run it, Valentina. And you might not even have to take another fight. But if you go down to strawweight, you probably have to take another fight. Maybe. Both divisions are kind of like in flux right now, because if you look at number 2 in strawweight is number 2 right now is Carla Esparza. Y'all remember what Tatiana did to Carla Esparza? So it's like she's one of those people that we've all had kind of pegged as a champion, but injuries kept her on the sidelines for so long. I firmly believe if she was healthy, she would be holding 1 or 2 of these titles right now. But she's back. She looked fantastic. Like she never lost a step, looked better than ever. I'm excited to see where she goes from here. I would prefer it to be at 125, but I don't make those decisions for her. And, I trust her team to make the best decision. So let's see where she goes from here.
All right, Matt. Solid takes along the way, but let me push back something here. We did have a recent fight between Shevchenko and Talia Santos, and a lot of people were asking for the run back. It was controversial. Some even scored it for Santos. And I know you're caught up in that 3-0 run with the Lakers. We got some shooters now. Maybe you missed it, but Aaron Blanchfield kind of looked pretty good last week. Are we kind of like dissing them and giving Tatiana the VIP line pass straight to the champ?
Aaron Blanchfield is fantastic. She absolutely deserves to be in that mix as well. I definitely don't want to see that fight being made. Don't put her in there with Tatiana, because that's just killing off a potential contender right there. So avoid that fight if she does stay at 125. But she seems pretty set at 115. Even though I disagree with that, I think she has to stay at 125. But I think she wins a lot of these fights, against anyone that's not the champ.
Mm-hmm. All right, Danny, how about you? We go to you for the next take.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. And look, I don't hate 115. She's never missed weight, making the weight for that division. So we can't really, be like, you can't go down there. The weight cuts are too extreme. Look, she's made weight every single time, right? Like there's no argument there. However, if you do look at her, she didn't look much smaller fighting Montana De La Rosa. I mean, she looked maybe even bigger. And when they locked horns, she seemed to be the more physical, stronger fighter. Yes, I know. Obviously, there was a discrepancy in degree of technique as well, which that plays a factor into who wins the wrestling. But when it came down to strength, she didn't look like a strawweight fighting a flyweight. She looked very much like she belonged in that weight class. In fact, I would actually say that she's probably on the bigger, stronger end of the fighters in that division. So look, if she really, really wants to drop to 115, okay, fine, do it. I mean, it's hard to not give her that opportunity. Keep in mind that she's a tough champion at strawweight, and she's got plenty of history in that weight class. However, if you ask me, and she's all about legacy, she mentioned it at the post-fight press conference, what holds more weight? What brings more value to your resume, to your legacy? A win over Valentina Shevchenko, who's got 7 consecutive title defenses, possibly an 8 here this coming Saturday at UFC 285, or beating Zhang Weili, who just can't really get a hold of the belt because that division is so competitive and they're constantly, trading that title. Valentina Shevchenko all day. I mean, if you talk about the best female fighters today on the planet, it's Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. And then after that come in Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, and other names. But Valentina Shevchenko is women's MMA royalty. So, I mean, the biggest prize is that one. And looking at the way Jennifer Maia was able to sneak in around from Valentina, looking at the way Tayla Santos, which was based on grappling, make a really competitive fight and to some people maybe even win it. Dude, Tatiana Suarez has a huge chance at becoming champion at 125 pounds, making history and building a very special legacy. And keep in mind, like, I know she also said at the post-fight presser that, she wants to earn it. She wants to put in the work. But again, not to be negative Nancy here, but you're 32 years old. You're coming off some bad injuries. You also mentioned you had a bunch of back issues in this camp. So it's not like you have a long, road left here that you're going to fight 6-7 more years. No, you got to do work, and it's now. So stay at 125. The line is shorter. The price is bigger. I don't know. Go for it. That's what I'm thinking.
This weekend, I'm sure will shake things up for her. Like Matt pointed out, she does have a win over Grasso. Grasso is in the main event at UFC 285. And like you pointed out, Danny, I think beating Valentina at this point definitely helps your legacy claims over Zhang Weili, who's just kind of getting started with her. Goes, how about you? This is a fun topic.
Man, I got beef with you, George, putting me on after the GOAT of Latino pronunciation, Montana de Rosa. I don't even think she says her name like that, Danny.
Tatiana Suarez.
Holy crap. But,
I got you guys.
I agree with these guys. Look, if you look at the changes, okay, that can happen over 3 years, it's very difficult. And I don't know that you can even figure it out in one fight. 125, I think, is where she needs to be. She has a very good fight IQ. She's able to blend her strengths, which is the strength and her technique, her timing. I think she looked amazing at that division, and I think she can kind of hold on there. She was a problem when she left. She's a problem now. I feel like we really haven't missed anything. Like, we can now stop talking about the 3 years because it didn't really seem to have an effect on that performance. I do kind of get nervous a little bit when you talk about the back injury, right? Anybody who's ever done any kind of competitive sports, there's no such thing as a slight back injury. Those things are nagging and they can get way worse really, really quickly. And a drop to 115 is not going to help. We hear so much from fighters about how injuries get exacerbated in doing some of these weight cuts. So for me, I think you take a little bit of time right now, you heal up that back injury, and you come back and take one of these top fighters. And if Valentina's the one that's standing at the end, then that could be that fight. But don't sleep on Grasso either. We've seen some crazy things in mixed martial arts, but I think her future is very, very bright. I think it's bright at 125.
All right. I am a Grasso fan, but I find it hard to believe she's going to beat Valentina Shevchenko this weekend. That's my prediction, and I know I'm not really on a limb here. Sky V's and El Daddy says Santos gets first dibs on either a title shot rematch or something she wants, and that being either Blanchfield or Suarez. So he says Santos is kind of dictating what's next. However, I don't know if you guys caught it. Cold Coffee got Dana White in the post fight for the last fight night 210, and Dana White was asked about Santos's name, where it came up during the week. So correct me if I'm wrong, but he's saying Santos doesn't want to fight in the U.S. So I don't know if she's difficult or what's going on here, but maybe that's why that fight didn't happen, because we were all wondering, well, why didn't you just run it back? Why Grasso? So he may have just shed some light on that. This division is very, very exciting, and it's got lots of options, and I think that's pretty cool, for a division that kind of came along here in the last few years and had to borrow some straw weights that didn't want to make 115 and some bantam weights that had that run but got smashed by the GOAT. So, yeah, I'm happy for those ladies. All right, let's move on to topic 5 here. Dana White told the media on Saturday that regarding Makhachev and Volkanovski, his preference is for them to mind their own divisions and then, defend their titles, and then we'll visit the rematch. Volk seems to have his opponent lined up with the interim featherweight champ Yair Rodriguez, who looked great, right, against Josh Emmett. But who is the best fit for Makhachev, and who could be his next dance partner, according to the latest timeline of availability and current fight bookings? And I'm going to help you guys out here just in case. We got Gaethje versus Fiziev, coming up here at UFC 286 later on in March. We got Oliveira versus Dariush, just got booked for May 6th, UFC 288. So that's about a few months away. Gregor versus Chandler, no date, but we know they're locked up at some point. And then as far as other contenders, RDA lost to Fiziev, so he's kind of out right now. Madsen lost to Grant Dawson recently, so he's kind of out. He was undefeated, you know. Hooker moonlighting for USADA. Ferguson, I think's over there Ivy League in it at Harvard, so he's kind of out. So what say you guys? Who could be next for Makhachev? And we turn to Danny.
And this is one of the rare moments that you'll see me criticize UFC matchmaking. For the most part, they give us pretty damn good fights, and the machine rolls pretty smoothly. But why the hell was Beneil Dariush booked to fight Charles Oliveira when he's clearly, by far, the most deserving contender, and you just had that fight resume? And also, look, the fight lent itself to make a claim for the rematch, right? I'm talking about the Islam Makhachev and Volkanovski bout, and you're still not going to make it because you want both guys, that, according to Dana White's logic, to fight contenders in their own division, which I'm totally on board and totally makes sense. But then on the other side, the deserving contender, you send him off to fight someone else in an unnecessary fight. And again, I'm not going to criticize Dariush Oliveira. The fight itself is a spectacular fight. I'm looking forward to it. But as far as like, did we need to see that fight? No. What's the whole point of doing a campaign for the title? It's for along the way to prove that you, one, have the merit to fight for the belt, and two, that you are a threat to the champion. Those two questions have already been answered in my books with Dariush's current win streak. He is on an 8-fight winning streak, 4 performance of the night bonuses, clearly merits a title shot. Yes. And throughout that process, beating Tony Ferguson, then defeating Gamrot, which that was big for me. And then just seeing how Volkanovski almost beat Islam Makhachev. Dude, I think Dariush is a huge threat to Islam Makhachev. So in my opinion, Dariush should have been next. He shouldn't be fighting Charles Oliveira. But that's the position that we find ourselves in. That's the situation. It also sucks that fight's not happening next month or in a few weeks, whatever. We're going to have to wait all the way till May. So I guess because timing plays a role, if Fiziev wins, then you throw him in there. I don't want to see Gagey just yet in a title fight. I do think he's got to do a little bit more. If he doesn't, then I guess you do wait till the winner of Dariush and Oliveira. I don't know. I think the whole division's a bit of a mess, contrary to 145, which was match make and build quite accordingly. So we have a clear, deserving interim champion in this case, fighting for the belt next. But at 155, man, this Dariush versus Oliveira fight is just stupid.
I couldn't agree more. And you know what makes it more confusing is that I thought Makhachev was going to take some time off because of the upcoming religious holiday of Ramadan, March 22nd to April 21st. Leave me alone. I've been busy. I defended. I'm going to do this. And then we'll give him a few months to recover from that and be ready for a proper training camp. So I'm thinking Makhachev, July or August. But then he recently said, who's next? Poirier throws his hand up, and I thought, well, he's coming off a win versus Chandler. He's popular. But yeah, man, God, why did they do Oliveira versus Beneil when it was kind of clear that it was Beneil? It's very, very confusing and very frustrating. It's not that I wouldn't want to see Poirier versus Makhachev. I have no problem with that. But again, this is the same campaigning I would do on behalf of Poirier if he was in Dariush's shoes. I never want the fighters to think it's personal. It's not. It's the same thing we would say if it was just a switching of the names, How about you guys?
Man, this whole situation is so confusing, and it's confusing by the UFC's own doing. Like Danny said, they created this mess. It's very clear. Beneil Dariush is very deserving of that title shot. And if he goes and fights Charles Oliveira and wins, he's even more, it makes it look even more ridiculous if you don't give it to him, right? But then what do you do with Islam? You just can't keep him. You can't have him sitting there waiting. I actually think that's probably what's the most fair to make him wait at that point because it would just look so damn ridiculous if Beneil Dariush got a win and wasn't next. I get it. Poirier's a big name. He's a good fighter. It's a nice test, but it's not the deserving fight. It wouldn't really make much sense. And then people just keep throwing out Alexander Volkanovski, and I get it. That was a fun fight. But there's nothing to be solved here. Volkanovski has Rodriguez. Allen's I mean, they have viable guys in each division. Unless Volkanovski says, I'm done with 145, I'm going up to 155. Now you can start throwing his name in the mix. But we need to keep that separate for a while. Beneil Dariush, he needs that shot. And even if it means Islam Makhachev has to wait a little bit, well, that's your own doing, UFC. I think he deserves that.
All right, Matt Wells, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I think if you're Islam, you have a couple of arguments on your hand, because you could use Dana's own words against him based on what he said at the post-fight press conference the other day, when he said that Yair Rodriguez going out there and, winning the interim title in spectacular fashion is great. And Islam can say, you're right, it is great. So let him become the full champion and let me and Volk run it back again right now. You can make that argument. Go to the table, and that way you have a fight that everybody really wants, although you may not necessarily agree it should be next. I personally, I would want to see Volk go back down and fight Yair. I want to see that title unification. But if you're Islam, and if you want the best fight available, I think personally at the moment right now, and you don't want to wait for these other fights to play out, you can say, let's run it back with Volk. If you don't want to give Dustin Poirier that shot, that's your other option right there. Does Dustin, necessarily deserve it? I mean, he did just beat Michael Chandler, and Michael Chandler is a guy that everybody's going to say should be in that mix if he goes out there and beats Conor. Same way if Conor beats Michael Chandler, people are going to be throwing Conor's name in there for the title. So it is a lot. It's convoluted, but if you're going by name recognition, Dustin has a win over, the most popular name in the division right now. He just tapped Michael Chandler. So it's a mess. But at the end of the day, if I'm Islam and I don't want to wait around, I go to Dana, I go to UFC, I say, hey, look, y'all said Yair was impressive, so let him run the division, and me and Volk run it back right now.
Yair versus Arnold Allen on the same card as Volk versus Makhachev. How about that 1-2 punch for International Fight Week? Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. It looks like it'll probably, I think Poirier's kind of off to the side. He showed interest. He's a pay-per-view draw. So I'm thinking it's going to be him. I appreciate Makhachev already wanting to keep his name. I thought for sure he was going to say Abu Dhabi 2023 in October. Talk to me then, but he seems like he's pretty anxious. Plus, if he really wants to be considered pound for pound, he has to defend his belt. So, and I think against the proper 55er. So there's arguments to be made on all the sides. All right, we're going to go to a little bit of a rapid fire here with some additionals. So guys, let's tighten up the answers. You guys have been doing awesome. Daniel Cormier returns to the commentary table for UFC 285. He'll be joining John Anik and Joe Rogan. First pay-per-view for Joe Rogan in 2023. In light of Jon Jones's recent remarks about squashing old beefs, do you expect an unbiased job performance from his old nemesis, DC? Going back to goes here.
Look, I don't think Daniel Cormier thinks for 1 second that Jon Jones has changed at all. I don't think they are going to be friends. But what I do think Daniel Cormier is capable of is being professional. I think he will be professional. I think he will call it down the center of the line. But the one thing I would say maybe to look out for is maybe overcompensation, right? People expect you. They're looking at every word and thinking it's going to be criticism. Maybe he might overcompensate for that, and that might be a little weird. But the dude's going to be professional. He's going to do his job.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, he's gonna be professional. It's gonna be regular DC that we got. It's not the first time that DC's called the Jon Jones fight. He called the Oben St. Preux fight back in 2016. Did a good job then, and that was at the height of their rivalry when everything was super still, animosity on both sides, like super strong. And now they're kumbaya. They're apparently friends, apparently. So we're gonna see how this fight week plays out, which is another interesting wrinkle. Like, how are they gonna do? I want to, if they get a one-on-one sit down, I will fire that up as soon as it hits the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Leave the cameras on too.
Yes, behind the scenes footage. I need all that. Give me all of it.
I'm gonna spit in your face. Danny, is he gonna call it straight, you think? And by the way, are you kind of glad they squashed it, or do you wish they were still beefing?
I'm glad they squashed it. I love good beefs, good old rivalries, and bad blood when they're fighting. But after that, look, shake the hand, acknowledge that you guys needed each other to make a ton of money, to build legacy, et cetera, et cetera. And they were perfect dance partners. I mean, one of the biggest rivalries the light heavyweight division has ever seen, probably second biggest, right behind Tito and Chuck. So yeah, I'm kind of glad they squashed it. Will he call it? 100% down the line in the middle and be unbiased? I don't know. I think even, and again, this is no shot at DC. I think even the greatest, and I think he's great. I think he's awesome at commentating, one of my favorites. But it's tough. It's tough, man, because he might feel like, okay, I need to overcorrect, or maybe in the process of correcting, of not being against Jon Jones because of their history, maybe he tries to overcorrect. It's just a very difficult line to walk. I think their history is definitely going to have a factor and is going to taint a little bit the commentary, but it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Like, again, DC's not the only one commentating. You got other people as well, Joe Rogan and Anik in that booth as well. So if anything, it'll add a lot of context. Cormier is part of his history. So I don't know. I do like it, even though I don't think it'll be 100% unbiased.
Guys, I got to get the last one in. Here we go. We got to make it quick. You know what Jones said. He shared his top 5 fighters of all time, including himself, Anderson Silva, GSP, Jose Aldo, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Do you agree or disagree? Let's hear your list. We're going first to Matt. Matt, who's your top 5? You don't have to put them in order. Just give me a 5.
I like the list, but I mean, you got to have Demetrius Johnson in there somewhere. Jon Jones, GSP, Fedor is probably in there. I don't know. It's tough, man. It's tough. I hate these subjective arguments, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Dennis? All right.
Yeah, there you go. Dylan Dennis. There you go. That's number 5.
Right. Think about it. We'll come back to you. Next up is Danny.
Jon Jones, GSP, no specific order. Demetrius Johnson.
Is that a spider
Fedor
back there?
And
there you go. That's my.
I gotta have a Brazilian in there. There's gotta be between Anderson Silva or Jose Aldo. I'm gonna go with Anderson Silva. Sorry, Jose, I love you.
Goes
GSP, Jon Jones, Demetrius Johnson, Anderson Silva. I'm gonna have to take Khabib off of there just because it was all in one area, and we have to nitpick here. We're talking about greatness. His career just wasn't long enough. He gets replaced by Fedor, 31 straight, all them belts. But in honorable mention, best combat sports athlete of all time, Henry Cejudo.
Ah, that gold medal. All right.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that, man. Fedor, Anderson, GSP, Jones, Demetrius Johnson. I'll always give a shout out to Royce Gracie because what he did, no weight class, no limits, finishing everybody, winning these tournaments was something that just wowed me back in the day. So I had to throw that in there. I always got to give love to Kamikaze with the beautiful artwork for this show and the 1s and 2s being handled by Cold Coffee. These guys are on the road to an Emmy one day for this beautiful show, Spinning Back Clique, that you can catch every Mondays, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, live here where we discuss all the biggest topics in MMA. I can't wait for next week because we're going to be reflecting on the return of the GOAT, Jon Jones. Goes and I'll be hosting a watch along here on MMA Junkie. Catch it, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific for 4 prelims, followed by the main card. I want to thank the panel. They did an outstanding job. Probably my favorite panel. Don't tell the other guys I said that. Shout out to myself, of course. I took it to another level. I was fantastic. And we're out of here. Enjoy the week. Go out and be a champion.